nobody has really cracked the code on doing good SBOMs and being able to understand all the vulnerabilities that exist in all of the code that's being used to create all the different solutions that we're using today.
Welcome to CISO Interviews, where Affinia hosts cybersecurity executives sharing career advice, actionable insights, and tips so that you can enhance your career and succeed as well.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today. As we begin, can you say a few words about your current role and what's in your purview?
Sure. So I'm a retained chief security officer for a company called Community Veterinary Partners. And our goal right now is really trying to increase our cyber maturity from a very basic level to a somewhat mature level. I would say the real goal is resilience, but trying to make sure that we don't have successful cyber attacks or material impact for cyber attacks that would happen in the future.
I understand. And how big is the team?
The team is all outsourced. So it's with two different managed service providers, one that's doing kind of the infrastructure side and one that's doing the monitoring and stuff like that. So those teams are huge, but there's no direct team besides me.
I understand. And this is your current role now, but what was your path into cybersecurity? What was the first door that you, so to speak, knocked on?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. And some people have asked me, could someone else do the same path again? I don't think you could do exactly the same path. So one of the first jobs that I had out of school was working as customer service at a paper company.
Interesting.
And you're going to wonder how this gets me into cybersecurity. So one day, the owner of the company says, "Hey, we're gonna do a computer upgrade. We're gonna upgrade that old mainframe system to Windows servers and Windows workstations." I said, "That sounds good." He said, "You're the youngest guy, so you get to work on it." So over the next 2 or 3 months, I did this upgrade, and when we finally went live, stuff broke, but I was able to fix it, and it was a very, very satisfying day in my very early career. And I realized maybe I should do this IT thing as a full-time job. So I saved up some vacation time and some money, and I went and did a 2-week Microsoft boot camp in Chicago. And after passing 7 exams over that 2-week period, I came home with a MCSE certificate. And I was able to use that to get a job with HP as a consultant doing cybersecurity jobs, starting with Bank of America, then with Nestle and with DHL. And then ended up getting hired by Nestle as the information security manager for their largest business unit that's based in the US. And then stayed there for 18 years, kept growing through those roles. And since then, I've been a CISO twice.
It's amazing. Well, since then, cybersecurity has changed somewhat, expanded a little. The attacks have grown more sophisticated, and the attackers are very well resourced. And I think as a result, a lot more people are looking into the space and figuring out how to make a career, whether it's transitioning from technology to cybersecurity, or maybe even earlier than that, someone who's in school or someone who is really coming from a non-traditional background and maybe looking at GRC or looking to get certs and kind of get up to speed. From your perspective, from the vantage point of your experience, what would be your advice? What are some of the 2-3 things you would suggest some of those greenhorns would focus on to set them up for success?
This episode is brought to you by Affinia, a community where 2,000 CISOs and other senior executives network, learn, and succeed together. To apply for your complimentary membership, please visit www.affinia.com or click the link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, so before I talk about the 3 areas, I will say there's a number of great programs across the US and across the world for people who are looking to get into cybersecurity. There's all kinds of apprenticeship programs, free programs that you can get into. So if your goal is to do this, and a lot of them will train you in the evening so you keep your day job, and then at the end of that program, you'll have a certification and you can get placed as an apprentice. So some great organizations that do that. But my 3 pieces of advice are: number 1, get experience any way you can. Now, there's a chicken egg scenario with an entry-level cyber job where they want you to have 5 years of experience for entry level, and that's not possible to get. So do an unpaid internship, do volunteering for cybersecurity, do projects at your school or online, Make sure that you've documented those well. So try and get experience any way you can. That's the first one. The second one, and I say this a lot to people that I mentor that are trying to get into the field. You mentioned coming from GRC or getting into GRC. Most people that I talk to who want an entry-level cyber role are looking at doing pen testing or SOC analyst. My encouragement is to understand all of the different areas of cybersecurity, because there's 8 or 10 other different areas outside of pen testing and SOC analyst. And if you understand those, you can set yourself apart from the majority of entry-level applicants to say, I'm doing GRC, or I'm doing cloud security, or I'm doing disaster recovery, and that will set you apart as a candidate. The third thing I would say, and this from my experience in working with interns and entry-level folks, is understanding business basics. So understanding what a business needs, what motivates them, being able to do basic things like schedule calls with people, write documentation, do good follow-up and time management. Those kind of things are really key to being successful in your entry-level role and helping you to get to those next levels as you grow. So those would be my 3 things.
Certainly. Well, it makes a lot of sense, because I think, and I'm hearing more and more, especially in more senior roles, that having putting the business hat on and just understanding the goals of the business and how cybersecurity is enabling that, rather than just serving as a department of no, where all new initiatives go to die. I mean, those days are long gone, it feels like. And kind of switching gears a little bit, for you mentioned you've been in CISO sit twice. What's top of mind? What are some of the maybe existing or emerging threats that CISOs would put in the top 3 most important, most prevalent, and most top of mind?
That's a fair question. So the first one is going to have to be generative AI. If you're looking in cybersecurity, chatter or news in the last 6 months or year, that's a huge topic. And I think 3 things around it. So first, how to leverage it to do cybersecurity. So how to leverage it in your SOC, how to leverage it for documentation. There's a number of great ways that you can leverage generative AI to help push down lower value tasks and allow your team to do higher value things. The second one is about protecting your company data in generative AI. We've seen a lot of cases where people are posting, AWS secret keys and passwords and all kinds of things that's embedded in code that they're putting into Gen AI to try and get, changes or fixes out of it. And there's a lot of problems with people putting sensitive data out there. And the third thing, I think, from a cyber perspective, is how to protect against attackers that are using Gen AI against you. If you think about phishing emails today as a #1 attack vector, if you get a phishing email today, you're going to search for the sender, the subject line, the attachment, the URL, and you're going to use that to eradicate that message across your environment. Well, if I'm using generative AI as an attacker, I can have a unique sender, a unique URL, a unique subject line, a unique attachment for every single person that I send it to. So those traditional ways of looking at things and stopping things are no longer going to work. So that's the first one, generative AI, with a lot of stuff behind it. I think the next one, the CISA organization has done some good work around this, as well as the US government, is SBOM, or software bill of materials. When we look at software that's within our environment or software that we are building ourselves, understanding what code is in there. And I think I talked before about generative AI. There's probably some great ways of using that to help create this, but nobody has really cracked the code on doing good SBOMs and being able to understand all the vulnerabilities that exist in all of the code that's being used to create all the different solutions that we're using today. And the third one is a phrase that I've heard a lot recently, and in a couple of different areas. It's the phrase toxic combinations. So there's certain toxic combinations that can happen in the identity space, in the data management space, in the cloud space. And if you see these toxic combinations, it should alert you. A lot of cybersecurity people get what's called alert fatigue, right? You're getting alerted all the time for things that may not be that big of a deal. And if you think about cyber kill chain and MITRE attack and some of the things like that, if you start to see, 9 out of 10 indicators that something bad is happening from all these different areas, that should definitely trigger you. If you're seeing 1 out of 10, then maybe you can look at it later or file it away until you start to see more of those toxic combinations. That can help to reduce alert fatigue and help you and your team to focus on the right priorities.
That makes a lot of sense. Just to double click on one item that you mentioned, the software bill of materials, we see, interestingly, a lot of organizations use open source code as part of their environment, and would often find that open source, by definition, it's maintained by enthusiasts. They maintain a library and they just do it out of goodness of their heart, and either they burn out or something happens and it just becomes open for attack, or they don't have good OPSEC, and someone takes over, and all of a sudden an attacker takes over the domain that expired, and the person went on vacation and forgot to renew the domain, and all of a sudden that attacker can push a patch that most of the organizations, it's an update, they would trust it, and the backdoor for $15 or the cost of the domain. It's are there solutions out there to kind of fix something like this, or how do people in general think about addressing something that can be a very important potential threat vector that most organizations are not even aware exists?
Well, so I think the answer is yes, there are things out there. I think if you look at CISOs and organizations that are on the cutting edge, they are probably building their own SBOM solutions to get ahead of some of these things, to understand where those vulnerabilities are in their code. But for someone who's at a small or medium-sized business, the ability to do that is zero, right? Nobody is being able to find all that information. And the stuff from CISO was saying that software providers should be giving you SBOMs of their software. And that could be one good way for small and medium-sized businesses, is you just get that from your SaaS providers so you know what's bad with it. But boy, for people who are making their own applications in-house and developing using code snippets and stuff that, out of the goodness of their heart, people are creating, those are challenges. That's a hard thing to do. And unless you have a big team and a big budget, to build your own solution for it. That's why I said I think it's one of the 3 things that people are thinking about.
It's interesting, and probably now that I'm thinking about this, that's part of the reason why the new director from one of the pillars of the policy, the U.S. policy, is to push more responsibility onto the software vendors to responsibility, but also liability, which obviously kind of creates another rabbit holes and opens another can of worms. But that's probably the reason why, because it's really impossible for a small, medium-sized business just to understand what's in the environment. Andrew, this was amazing. This was so interesting and so insightful. Where can people find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Andrew Wilder, pretty easy to find there. I also have my own website. It's called cybersecurityintheboardroom.com.
Awesome. If it's okay with you, we'll include it in the show notes.
Absolutely. Please do.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you so much, and I hope we'll get to do it again.
Thanks, Misha. I appreciate you having me. Cheers.
If you liked this episode, please subscribe to this channel and visit aphinia.com for more information about your complimentary membership, or click the link in the show notes.